Thank you. Nice to see everyone. And I think every single presentation in this whole conference will talk about AI, and we're gonna narrow the focus a little bit and just talk about AI in financial services. And one observation I've had in my whole career, I would say, is that in almost all cases, enterprise software companies and actually hardware, the largest single category, the largest vertical is financial services. And I think that we expect that AI, this will continue. This will be a very, very large category of AI. And we also think that AI will likely be the critical part of competitive advantage in all types of financial services in the future. There are already lots and lots of machine learning applications in financial services, and they basically apply to all different types of use cases across everything from investment management to banking to fraud and risk assessment and insurance claims management. So that's been true for the better part of at least a decade. And actually, I'd say neural networks was the very first application in fraud, was one of the first major applications of neural networks in 1994. So it's been big, but actually it's very hard. And if you say how many large language models or reasoning models are actually in production now in financial services, not as many as you would think. This is much harder to implement. So why is that? And that's what we want to talk about. And one of the reasons is everything is highly regulated. And I actually attended, if you're not a geeky finance person, FSOC is a committee chaired by the Treasury Secretary, which includes all the key regulators. I went to a session last June on AI, and actually, I'd say coming out of that session, I felt this is going to be, it could be a decade before you really figure out and make them satisfied with everything about data privacy, security, quality, bias and explainability, impact on consumer protection, vendor risk, illicit use. So this is a tough thing to crack. So our view is that the first big application are going to be vertical applications where you have workflow that is highly, highly specific to that application, and the vendors will understand that workflow, they'll understand the systems in use. It will be compliant from a regulatory standpoint. And the way we think about it is saying, make expensive people more efficient. That is a key driver for the way we think about it. So we'll expand on that today. So we're very happy to have three incredibly expert companies and really great companies here. And they have applications that they can demo for you right now. And they're in wealth management, trading and investing, and then payments and transaction fraud. So quick intros, I'll start with Drew Sievers to my far right, who's the CEO of Arkifi. It's a tool for financial professionals like every single one of you to assess and monitor their portfolios, enable fast decision-making, reduce risk. And it does AI-powered data search, sophisticated financial analysis, and importantly, is tightly integrated into Microsoft Excel. And they have two of the top 10 global hedge funds in POC or some sort of process right now, and are beginning deployments in venture capital and private equity industries as well as that. Then Mike Shaw is the founder and CEO of SigFig. They are a digital wealth application started in 2011. I would say they are the enterprise provider of choice with some very large clients, including UBS and Wells Fargo and Citizens and Scotiabank and New York Life, and have 70 billion or so of AUM. What's interesting, they also have an advisor tool for wealth management, and then importantly, they're going to talk about a new product called Engage, which is it's basically personalization, workflow, guided discussions, supervision for wealth managers. And importantly, my favorite fun fact about Mike is while he was a college intern at Amazon in 2001, he developed the instantly issued Amazon card with Chase, which is still in production today. And if you don't have it, I'd say it's one of the best financial apps of all time. Mike Shaw built that as a college intern.
I have that.
So when you tell me you've done something that important in college, then You can talk about. You'll be on the panel next year if you've done that. And Soup's Ranjan is the CEO of Sardine, which just a few weeks ago announced the $70 million Series C. And they are AI agents, among other things. They have lots of tools for risk and fraud, but they have AI agents for risk teams in AML and screening, merchant risk, chargeback management. His background, started Sardine about 5 years ago, right? And before that was at Revolut and Coinbase in risk, as well as early in his career was at Yelp and Flurry. So I want you to see the products so you see what they do exactly, and then we're gonna come back and talk about it, and we're gonna start with Drew, right?
Oh, we were?
No, we're starting with Mike.
Okay.
Sorry, we're not in the wrong order. Right? We're starting with Mike.
All right. Well, we'll switch over to the demo here. A couple things of note. One, Hans mentioned inefficient use of time. Financial advisors are probably the highest paid people inside of a bank, at least on the retail front lines. And it is crazy how inefficient they are. So the bar is low for where AI can help them. We're gonna blast through a demo here just to get flavor of like how we're helping them. 3 golden rules on when we're building our AI. 1, you have to focus on solving real problems because advisors are notorious for not adopting new technology, so you have to solve real problems for them. 2, if regulators are concerned in a certain area, stay far, far, far away. You do not want to be building AI in areas where regulators have concern. And 3, in our vertical, focus on accuracy. You know, like anyone can get ChatGPT running, ChatGPT out of the box, and some of the applications that we've built, maybe 60, 70, 80% accurate, which in the real world is basically completely useless. So a lot of our focus has been on how do you verticalize to drive accuracy. All right, here we go. So what you've got up on the screen here is a solution called Monitor and Outreach. What this technology is doing is it's actually helping the advisor automatically monitor all the clients that they serve, identifying opportunities to reach out proactively. Turns out most advisors are not actually looking over their clients every day. They're out looking for new clients. We automatically then draft an email that gets sent by the advisor to the client. The advisor then waits for that client to respond. Hopefully that client wants to engage. And I'll flip through some of this, but basically the client self-schedules a meeting with the advisor. Now we use AI to help automate all the pre-meeting prep. So a lot of time is spent actually preparing for meetings. So we'll connect to all the different data systems of the firm, pull in all their data, present all that information for the advisor so that 10 minutes before the meeting, they can get a quick recap, some recommendations on things that they should talk about based on what the client shared. When the meeting launches, this is the solution Hans was mentioning called Engage. So the way this solution works, when you're actually in a meeting, instead of having it just be like a Zoom or a Teams meeting, the platform is actually listening and analyzing what's happening and suggesting the right content for the advisor. So not only is there screen-based collaboration where you'd be talking to the client, having a conversation, and actually all these content modules are all personalized. So while the conversation's happening, all that data is actually being input on the screen in real time. And then sometimes, the client may mention something through the course of the conversation. And so in this case, imagine that the client was talking about the new child that they just had. Well, our AI identifies that topic and then can suggest a whole body of content and resources, products, recommendations, various different things that might be relevant in the moment based on what the client actually said during the meeting. Then let's imagine that the advisor actually wants to do some workflow with the client. So in this case, maybe because of having a child, they might want to update the beneficiaries on their accounts. We'll pull down the form needed to do that, automatically fill it out for the advisor, and then one click, they can send that to the client. The client can then execute, the form or whatever it is. In the real world, this is like a ton of back and forth. After the meeting's over, then some assistant sends some FedEx envelope for you to send the paperwork here. You can just get it done right during the meeting. We've got a whole bunch of verticalized tools. So this is a solution called Portfolio Compare, where the client can actually just upload a copy of all the different statements that they have for all the different accounts that they may have. And then our AI will actually extract all the data from the statement. So in this case, imagine the client had a 401k at Fidelity and the advisor wants to get their hands on that assets. And then as a result, we'll then present a real-time portfolio analysis. So because we've extracted all the holdings in your account, we can run a portfolio analysis for the advisor during the meeting that they can use to present to the client. And actually the part the advisors love is if the client actually decides to hand that money to the advisor, there's a system in the US called ACAT, which transitions assets from one firm to another. And we'll use AI here to actually automatically fill out all the ACAT paperwork. So the account opening process and the ACAT paperwork gets filled out for the advisor. Again, they can send that to the client right during the meeting. Finally, when the meeting is over, automatic identification of any next steps, automatic drafting of a follow-up email that the advisor would use to send to the client, plus, of course, meeting notes, summaries, that's all saved to CRM. And then finally, we'll extract all the data that was actually shared or discussed, either verbally in the meeting or through any of the modules that they did together. And all of that automatically syncs back to Salesforce so that the CRM actually is collecting, memory of the client and all the information they share. So if you just kind of go through that, that probably would have been 4 or 5 hours of work for the advisor, all done now seamlessly in real time during the meeting itself.
Yeah, I think what's also important is it does a better job than the advisor would have done by themselves, actually, too. It's more seamless, better from the client, better client experience as well. Okay, Drew, do you want to?
I'm next?
Yep,
Yeah.
up next.
And are you guys playing the video? Is that what you're doing? Yeah. So I'll just narrate a video and apologize for the raw nature. All right. So this is Arkifi. We run inside of Excel. This is a model you're looking at for a portfolio company. And what I've done is I've got it open. We're introspecting it. I also have a PDF board deck that's been loaded and ingested at the same time. So is it playing or hit play maybe? Oh, there it goes. Okay, thank you. All right. So, and what'll happen here is on the right, you're seeing the pane that holds not only the PDF, which is right there where I'm kind of going over it. And I actually narrated this video and we've turned it off, so I'm kind of trying to catch back up with it here. But when you click on this, what it does is it submits it in. And it's a reasoning model that is going to figure out a couple of things. The prompt, you can't read it, but what the prompt is basically saying is analyze both the board deck and the board financials. And this is the VC use case that I'm walking you through right here for board prep. And what it's going to do is it's going to ingest it, and it's coming back and it's saying, okay, this document is for Fortimo. Here are the revenue metrics that you need to know and some of the notable insights, some of the strategic initiatives. So what it's doing right now is it's summarizing the PDF. It's analyzed the PDF, it's brought it in, and it's concluded that. So then what it does is it goes to the workbook. And now it's introspecting the entire Excel workbook, and it's going to summarize that as well. And then it's going to do kind of a diff comparison where it's seeing if there's any differences between the revenue that's quoted inside of the board deck and the revenue that's quoted inside of the financial model. And so it's bringing that back. And the conclusion basically is, yeah, there's a difference. And it's tiny. It's a rounding error. It's probably $100,000 out of 19 million. So then what you can do is you can add and say, I want to go a little bit deeper. So tell me the revenue drivers for this company. Tell me if they have any dips, weird dips, or any spikes, or anything that's particularly odd. So again, what it'll do is it's going to analyze the entire model. And this is only a 3-tab model. With the hedge funds we're working with, we're talking about 15-tab models that are intricate and difficult to manage. But this is a fairly straightforward one for the demo. And what it does is it comes back. And if you've never dealt with this company and you're a new partner on it the first time or whatever, you're getting all the revenue drivers, all the cost drivers for this business. It figures it out, summarizes it. And then what it'll do is it'll also look and see if there are any weird spikes or drops in revenue or in COGS or anything else. So then what you could say is, you know what, I saw that China was important. And so I'm going to just say how much money this company spend on their China operations. So there is no line item for that in the model. So what it's going to do is it's going to go through the entire model again and try to figure out where the costs are for China. So if you're dealing with a 15-tab model, this is awesome because it's basically grabbing it from all these different areas and bringing it back. So it found office expenses, it found rent, it found total spending in China as well, and it brought it all back. And then you could say, okay, how much revenue did they get? And the total cost here was about €250,000. So then what it does is it has to go to a completely different area now to try to figure out where revenue is for China. And then it will bring that back, and it figured it out. It's only 2,000 euros. So they spent €250,000 to get 2,000. So it's not a great ROI for this particular company. So I take no blame for that. So the other thing that I'll say is once you're here, you could also just start going into a totally different area. And you could say, you know what? I want to build a comps table for PayPal. Why this company got acquired by Boku, which was a competitor to PayPal in mobile payments. So now what it'll do is it'll say, okay, if you want to build a comp table to understand the margins for what you should be getting if you're going to sell this company, it goes out to FactSet, in this case, grabs all that data, and you're going to watch it build in Excel a comps table. If you were an analyst, this is like a dream. So it just built a full comps table using information from FactSet, and ignore that, and also using information from the SEC. So finally, you have an ability to do Q&A on this. You could basically say, hey, based on the thread above, give me 3 good questions for the CEO as I go into this board meeting. So this is sorry, Mike. So if this happens, it'll come back and it'll say, okay, you said China was a big deal, but it's not doing as well as you thought. You've got financial performance issues, operational improvement issues, et cetera. So basically this particular use case, and we have a lot of them because we're also working with long-short equities, we're working with equity research analysts. It really is a powerful system and allows you to do a lot. So that gives you an idea of a little bit of the capabilities.
Excellent. We'll have a chance to talk about this in a second. Let's go to Soups next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so a question for the audience over here. What do you think was the fastest growing job in the US in 2024? It was a manicure, pedicure person. But what was the 4th fastest? The 4th fastest was compliance officer. So banks can't hire compliance officers fast enough. And today, when you are being onboarded at a bank or you're making a payment, if you happen to have a name which matches the name of a person on a sanctions list or a politician, you're probably stuck waiting in some queue. And your payment is not going anywhere until a compliance officer has reviewed it. So what we've done at Sardine is that we've built agents, AI agents, which can automate a lot of these mundane reviews that compliance officers have to do. We've also built it from the point of view that it's supposed to be a co-pilot because regulators, they don't want AI to fully automate everything because the risk of like a false negative leaking in, like a sanctioned person getting through, is very, very high. So with that in mind, what we've built is a review agent which can act as a co-pilot. And what it is looking for in this demo is, let's just suppose your name happened to be David Johnson or Vladimir Putin, except you had a middle name which was different than the Vladimir Putin. You're probably stuck waiting in a queue somewhere. And what our agent will do is it'll actually look at, is your middle name the same as the actual Vladimir Putin? Is your year of birth the same? Sometimes the years of birth and the month of birth and the date of birth, they get flipped around. So it brings into its context, that, as well as, if you've uploaded a document like a passport, it'll look for the discrepancies in dates of birth. And this is also less of, black or white. It's not something that you could do with a rules-based system because a lot of banks have a lot of sort of a gray decision-making criteria. If the year of birth happens to be plus minus 3 years to the actual Vladimir Putin, then, if it is within 3 years, then you are a match. Otherwise, you're not. So all of that subjectivity is actually being brought into the AI agent. Here's another one where, with the rise of AI, we are seeing it's very easy to create deepfake videos. So this is a Sardine engineer who has swapped Tom Cruise's face on his face, and he could pass KYC online anywhere if he could basically print a passport that looked like Tom Cruise, right? So a real-life Mission Impossible. However, Sardine can actually detect it because while it is easy for AI models to copy how you look, how you speak, AI models still cannot copy how you type or how you hold the phone. So in this case, we catch it because AI, when someone is replaying it, the phone is maybe face down and there's no interaction with the phone. So those are the intrinsic signals that Sardine looks for. And then a third video that I want to share here is again bringing into agentic commerce into mind over here. As AI agents start shopping for us, a lot of those AI agents can actually be detected by tools like us because the mouse is moving in a straight line, etc. So therefore, this is just an open question here that we are also grappling with. How do we create a system that tools like us are allowed to actually pass through an AI agent, which is being authorized by an end user? Otherwise, we'll probably fail that transaction. Over to you.
All right, well, let's talk about, and those of you in the audience who want to ask questions, if you have some, start planning for that now. But let's talk about adoption. So you have the regulatory issues, which we can dig into more, but what do you think is about the institutional resistance to adoption, these things which offer you demonstrate such compelling efficiencies, and how do you overcome that? And I don't know, who would like to
Yeah, I'm happy to go. So what I would say for us is, we're not replacing a financial analyst so much as accelerating their work. But when they see it, there is institutional inertia to not try something new because they're moving fast. There's a ton of pressure on them to get the deck done. They're getting cranked. They're tired. And they're really struggling. So when push comes to shove, they almost always want to revert back to what they know rather than trusting something. Now, in AI in general, you need to make sure it's not hallucinating, because if it is, then one bad response will just kill you. And so what I have found is that as they use it, it's almost like somebody who doesn't like hot water getting into a jacuzzi. It takes a while. And so they start with their toe and they get a toe in and it's like, okay, that feels good. And then they get their foot in. And so we have found it takes about 50 positives before they start to trust you. So that's a lot of work to get to. And so, but when you see that, then it becomes daily use. But getting to there and changing the behavior is really difficult. And we haven't seen anything that for us, and we have a weird type of solution where you can just drop it in and they just are like, oh my God, I'm taking and running with it. So
Yeah. What about work? Maybe talk about workflow. What is the workflow or the system of record integrations necessary also, as you found?
Yeah, I think for us, when you think about adoption, there's the institution and then there's the user. So on the institution front, I think the best practices that we've learned is, one, as I mentioned before, stay away from the compliance risk areas, because as soon as you start using AI to deploy against those solutions, you're going to be in a massive queue of other pilots waiting to be reviewed by some bureaucratic centralized committee. So, find use cases that are not subject to those risks. And then, when you think about the user adoption, I think going back to what I said earlier, solve existing user problems. There's a lot of fancy stuff that AI could do one day. The technology is actually pretty much there for it to do those things. But start with the things that the advisors already do. Because if you're trying to solve some problem that they didn't know that they had, you got a much higher tail decline. But if you do the work that they today are either having to pay someone to do or needing to do themselves, and you make that work go away, there's a huge smile like from day one.
And have you found that, for example, is the internal model resistance, I would say that's a very common thing about fraud and AML. And how have you overcome that?
Yeah, so the same model governance schemes that apply for machine learning, what we have found is that can be applied to AI models as well. We've been building it with transparency in mind. And also, one of the things that is less talked about in public about AI models typically is that no one is talking about, how are you testing AI models and how are you qualifying if the AI model continues to do what you wanted it to do. So when we built our sanctions agent, what we did is if AI model says, I want to approve, that's the recommendation. If the human overrides that decision, we log it. And then we can always produce it to the regulator that this is the times when AI and humans, they actually disagree with each other.
that's a good idea.
Okay, now let's also talk about, let's go back to regulators because it's a big topic. And as I said, both the regulators themselves, there's a lot of resistance to this and concerns about model bias. And bias potentially affecting the model may result in more risk. It may have. It could also, in the case of credit models, but even other things, they worry about bias even in investment advice, for example.
Yep.
Have you had those issues? Have you actually faced that so far, and have you overcome that?
I think for us, it's been about avoidance. Because if you're going to be deploying as a financial institution AI that's going to give advice to your clients, that's extremely risky. There's a lot more work that we can help automate that isn't risky. I'm sure one day we will do that once the rules and regs are clear, the testing policy procedures are clear. But because there's so many different places AI can be useful, in our view, it's like, why go into the hot red areas when there's so much greenfield where there's not risk and not concern?
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean, even when you're in the green fields, you need to have AI policies, data privacy policy. I mean, dealing with these banks, you've got to have all your approaches to how you're securing all that data, sorted out with clear policies that's SOC audit compliant and all these things. But I think avoiding the areas where if the AI goes rogue, the bank is in deep trouble. I think it's just safer to avoid those areas.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not just banks. SEC has requirements on cyber and risk, which are and privacy and lots of things which are just as strenuous and complex. I want to see if there are questions we can. Yes.
So what's your approach for accuracy? Now, you mentioned it's a key thing. We know that it's pretty hard to improve to 90% accuracy. Curious to see the approach.
Yeah, so internally for us, we have a team called Little Black Book. It's just the code name for the team. And their focus is 100% on accuracy. And there are so many different techniques that you can deploy in AI to drive accuracy higher and higher. You can use multiple models, compare answers. You can increase token length. You can increase, using different vendors. We have, in AI land, they call it evals, but basically automated testing against a known set of, prompts where you should get a certain answer. There are just so many different techniques that you can deploy to start at, 60% accurate and get to 99.99.
Yeah, I mean, you have to use. There is no silver bullet, and the companies that hallucinate the most in the space are the ones that are thinking there's a silver bullet, and it's just not. Like, I mean, I'll give you an example. If you're trying to use AI to extract information out of a PDF, it's not one thing. You got to pick a certain model that's probably different than the other model you're using in a different part of the stack, and then you have to have probably 2 OCR technologies that are stacked on top of that in order to do it properly. So, and then you have to run all sorts of voting and queries and evals against it to make sure it works. So it's the weirdest thing. You're solving for the most bizarre problem set that you never had to in a traditional SaaS world.
Okay, one more question? Okay, so just thank you, panelists. Remember, the takeaway is focus. That it's extremely, extremely ripe opportunity. Solve problems, make expensive people vastly more efficient, which is what you can do in a vertical where you understand every single aspect of it. And that's there we think is going to win first. So thanks, panelists. Good luck to all of you. Their products are going to replace you soon, so better get to work. That's what I would say.